Okay, I think everybody is here who wants to be, so welcome to Edge Talks for December 2015. My name's Ollie Benson and I'm your host today. We're talking about hackathons and hacking. We've got some great guests lined up. Perry Timms and Zoe Lord will be our main speakers, and we're also hoping to hear from some people who've taken part in hacks around the country as well. As always, it's an interactive session, so there's lots ways you can get involved in. Use the chat box, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, that way, to contribute throughout the seminar, and raise your hand if you want to join in the discussion. We're having plenty of opportunities throughout the various talks for you to join in. If you are on Twitter, then please use the hashtag EdgeTalks and the handle School for Radicals and the Edge NHS. If you haven't checked out the new the new Edge website, I definitely recommend it. It looks very nice. It's had a proper scrub up. Don't forget, you can also join our Facebook group, School for Health and Care Radicals, and also one for the Edge NHS. So there's two Facebook groups there. And as always, we, as well as doing this WebEx, we also have a tweet chat on Wednesday, the following Wednesday, at between 4 and 5 GMT, using the hashtag EdgeTalks. So if you've watched today, you've reflected on it, and there's things that you want to talk about with other participants, join us on Wednesday at 4 PM on Twitter using the hashtag EdgeTalks. So the team today, as I said, we've got two great presenters. Perry Timms is coming up shortly, and then Zoe Lord after that. There's a nice picture of me, just in case you can't tell what I look like. I think I might be wearing the same shirt. Slightly embarrassing. And we've also got Kate on, who's monitoring our Twitter, and Jodie, who is monitoring our chat room. So that's the team today. As I said, the plan is Perry's going to start talking about hacks and hackathons in a couple of minutes. And then Zoe is going to give an example of running a hack, and then we're also looking to talk to people from Nottingham University's Hospital Trust who have run a hack recently, and also in Hull, where the AHSN ran a hacking association with the Hospital Trust and the CCG. So that's the plan for today. Hopefully it should last as long as it's a lively discussion, sort of between an hour and an hour and a half. So that's the plan. I'm going to hand over to Perry, who is been working with the team here at NHS England for a number of months, and is our resident, I guess, guru on all things hackathon. Perry, can you hear me? He's vanished. Perry, are you there? He's vanished. That was slightly worrying. Okay. So while we try and get Perry back, I don't know what's happened to him. Shall we pass over to Zoe? Are you okay to do your talk, Zoe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm gonna. There you go.
Thank you, and morning, everybody. So my session was meant to follow Perry's, but we'll see when Perry jumps back in, and then we'll swap back over him to talk about hackathons. So I'm delighted to be telling you about the NHS change model and the hackathon that we've used to refresh the NHS change model. So mine is going to be really practical about how actually we did a hack. So what I wanted to tell you first is a little bit about our problem and how we actually became to be starting to use a new approach to change. So at first we started with the NHS change model. Maybe we could have a quick show of hands about who has known about the NHS change model, who's used the NHS change model. So if you've heard of the NHS change model, just by your name, maybe you could just maybe either raise your hand or brilliant. So if I can see the hands coming up now. So just pop your hand up if you've heard of the NHS change model before. Brilliant. I can see lots of hands popping up down the list. So the NHS Change Model was developed in 2012 by hundreds of health and care staff to look at how we can accelerate change across the NHS. So it's built up of 8 components, and it starts with our shared purpose. So this is why we're actually doing any change. And then the other components are all about, they don't come in any particular order, but they all need to be interconnected and aligned. So we've got spread of innovation, improvement methodology, rigorous delivery, transparent measurement, system drivers, engagement to mobilise, and leadership for change. And all of these put together can ensure that you have a successful improvement programme. So why did we want to refresh the NHS Change Model? So we all know within improvement that we need to be on a continuous improvement cycle. And what we wanted to do is review the NHS Change Model, find out, were people using it, were they not using it, who liked it, who didn't like it. And what we wanted to do is strengthen the model. We wanted to make sure that it was fit for purpose and support organisations going through significant changes and challenges at the moment. So for example, the 5-year forward view. What we wanted to do with the change model also is we wanted to make sure that it was going from conceptual to enabling. So it wasn't just something that was written on a paper, but actually it enabled people to achieve change in the NHS and across health and care as well. And what we also found is that people wanted, people weren't using the NHS change model because they worked in separate parts of health and care. So they may have been working in social care or care homes, but they weren't using the NHS change model because it was called the NHS change model. So we wanted to have a look at that as well. So why is a hack? I'm presuming you want to know what a hack is first before we go on to why is a hack. Let me just see if Perry has rejoined us. No. So maybe Ollie, would you like to explain what a hack is before I go on to why we use the hack methodology? Okay, so it just looks like I'm here at the moment and there's no Perry at the moment. Okay.
Hello there. Sorry, it's Paul Woodley here. We've just been on the phone to Perry. He's just had some technical difficulties, but he'll be rejoining us shortly.
Ollie, would you like to just give a little précis about what's a hack?
Yeah, certainly. So the idea of hacks and why I guess they're different to sort of other events. Hacks come from, background is the software industry, and the idea is that you sort of take a concept and then you work on it in a very short time span. So it's very sort of time boxed. That tends to mean either sort of 24 hours or a day or a weekend. And you take either a problem, so you say this is an issue we have, or sometimes you turn that from a problem into an ambition. You say this is what we want to achieve, and then you take that and you allow a group of people, and you can make that group as open, as big or little as you want, to go away and solve it in the way that they think is best. But the idea is very much that it's not just about a paper-based exercise. And the whole point of a hack is that actually at the end of that period, that sort of time box period, you come away with something that is very a very definite product. It doesn't necessarily need to be a finished product, but the idea is that you've proved something. So quite often you'll hear people talk about proof of concept. So this works really well in the software industry. You know, what you do is you say, okay, we're going to, we want to make a better way of using a login screen. We want to use this technology slightly different. You allow those people to get into self-organizing groups, go off and try and work with that. And at the end of the time, they come back and they present what they've done. and actually from there you see some real sort of different approaches that people have, and then you generally either pick a winner or look at actually from a combination of those, what can we achieve. So as I said, it's been around, sort of the idea of hacking has been around for about sort of 10, 15 years in the software industry, and I guess people in other industries have started saying, well, it seems to be working there, how can we replicate it there? So part of the idea is to take what's the best practice from the software industry and bring it into other industries. Does that explain it? I hope so.
Fantastic, thanks Ollie. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to use a different approach within within the NHS and across health and care to look at our problem, which was how could we improve the NHS change model. So we wanted to do something different. As Ollie said, hacks are being used across the world in lots of different areas, mainly within IT. And we wanted to look and to really test how we could use a hackathon methodology to improve health and care. What we usually use is rapid improvement events, and these would really be focused on sort of maybe building an action plan at the end of our session. But actually we wanted a concept, we wanted something, we wanted to accelerate change and the speed of change. So we wanted to test this new approach about how we could move things forward really quickly within the NHS. And we wanted to use some untraditional approaches to change. So this sort of includes the hackathon methodology, it includes sort of Unconference sort of approaches, which is all about people following their interests. So we didn't set the agenda, and I'll go on to talk about this in a moment. We didn't set the agenda, we had a wide open approach to what we wanted to change, but it was up to the participants on the day to come along, and it was up to them to do what they wanted to do to improve our change model. Now I've just seen that Perry's back online, so Perry, would you like to follow on? I was just up to why we were hacking the NHS change model. So welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
Would you like to should we go back to your slides, and then I'll carry on about why we hacked the NHS change model following your slides?
Sounds really good to me. Yeah, sorry about that. Our network just went completely down. So I think, do you have to now flip me to be presenter? That's it. Yay! So can you see that nice hackathon environment in front of you on screen, Zoe? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, thanks for tolerating that one. But yeah, of all times for the network to pop out and then sort of blip. Anyway, I'm back. So thanks for sticking with me. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you about some of the principles of hackathons. I'll start by referring to that picture there. I mean, it looks like it's an aircraft hangar with lots of people sat around tables, but that's the kind of thing that sometimes you see on hackathons. They can be massive scale, or as Zoe said about the event that we ran the other month, they can be a little bit cozier. A little bit about me, just to put it in context. I'm trying to hack the concept of a job. So all of these logos are people who I do work with and learn from and participate in. So yeah, so I'm hacking the job construct pretty much daily, working in these different environments. But working with these kinds of people gives me access to things like innovation and creativity that the hacks are all about. And if you want to get in touch with me, as well as on the Edge Talks hashtag, there's my Twitter handle. I prefer a tweet to an email any day, so I'm trying to hack the way people communicate with me as well. So you may have heard of crowdsourcing or sort of collaborative participation in events, and this is a screen grab from a well-known funding platform for raising awareness and funds into projects. And so literally we are seeing people converge around new ventures, problem solving and issues online, And so this kind of crowdsourced environment is what we're now starting to see, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, and what some people might call the wisdom of the crowd. And that leads me into really what's going on in the workplace, just as a little bit more context setting for what hackathons are all about. A Canadian practitioner I know, John Husband, has coined this marvelous phrase, the hierarchy, to describe really how work has broken out of triangulation and formula sort of hierarchical processing into this, what looks messy but is very hyper-connected set of people who are acting almost like as nodes within a network, and so it's very communal rather than hierarchical. And I think that's the kind of working environment we're now starting to see coming into play a little bit, and that's the environment that I've seen lots of hackathon-type activity take shape. So I thought I'd talk to you about what one is, and I've come up with a little bit of a hacked strapline. There's a famous coffee brand who on their delivery vehicles have saving the world from mediocre coffee. So I've hacked it a bit and said really that hackathons are about saving the world from mediocre workshops. We've all sat in workshops where we've tried to envisage a strategy or create a new product or solve a problem, and they're not normally as successful as perhaps we hoped they would be. But what I'm seeing in hackathons is a different kind of frame put around problem solving and idea creation and new products and services that I think is leading us into a bit more of that crowdsourcing environment and that socialized work environment that I've just talked to you about. So what is one? So it is that crowdsourcing innovation I talked about. It's Process-lite. There's still a frame of reference, and Zoe will talk you through the one that we jointly participated in September that had some degree of process, but also some degree of fluidity and it going in its own direction. But it's about outcome creation. There is ultimately something to be had, a result to be derived, a problem to be solved. So there's an outcome for this. It's not just indulgent ideation. And I think the third bullet point there really sums up what I think hackathons are. They seem to get people a bit more daring than your average workshop, so there tends to be a little bit more bravery, courage, random thoughts and so on. One of the things I really like about them is because they're social, they have these three elements of being inclusive, leveling, and participative. It doesn't matter what grade you occupy in the working environment, it doesn't matter what your experience levels are. In a hackathon, everybody's on a pretty even footing and it's a very level playing field. So I think that's something I quite like, that there's no hierarchical power exercised within a hackathon. It tends to be who's got the best ideas and who's got the most energy towards a solution tends to drive the thing through. And the bottom point there about being Pacy, Energising and Purposeful, I'm sure Zoe will tell you just how tiring that hackathon was that we did, because they're really fast paced, there's a real energy towards them, and there's a sense of purpose that people really want to put their efforts towards. So that's really what they are. And so I'll move on now to kind of summarise a little bit of that. They're inclusive and open, they're democratic and social, they're staged and iterative. So if that's the user experience reference, then that's what we see in hackathons. So that's the UX. And what makes a good one then? So these are the kind of hallmarks, if you want, of what a good hackathon looks like. A critical issue or a new opportunity is really where you can have it as a, let's create some new products, let's create some new services if you're a company wanting to expand your range of things that you offer. Or it could be that there's a really sticky issue, there's maybe a customer service issue you just can't get right, or in healthcare, there's just something where you can't bring certain people together to solve a problem no matter how much you try. So it's a critical issue, and really a hackathon is aimed at addressing that critical issue. They're energized themselves, but you need people who have got the appetite for this, and they are quite creative in the way they think, and they're definitely into that collaborative element. So, that's something to bear in mind, is who you include into it, whether you invite people in and they nominate themselves, or whether you deliberately try and go through some selection process to find those people who are ultra keen on this sort of thing. Environment's important, and so I've said a conducive environment. I've run them in small rooms, large rooms. The more sort of edgy and warehousey and slightly random they feel, the more it tends to stimulate people's alternative thinking. Yeah, I think it's somewhere where people have the space. There's natural light. There's a free-flowing sort of energy source even in the building, but sometimes the energy comes from the environment. So it's good to have a place that seems to fit that edgy thinking that's needed. And belief in the process is probably quite an easy thing to say, but it's quite a difficult thing to sometimes get across to people, because they will probably go, oh, well, this is just another workshop with a fancy trendy name, or they might say something along the lines of, we tried this before several times, nothing's worked. But this process has a certain degree of energy and breakthrough thinking attached to it. And so you need people to literally hold that judgment and suspend that and have some even temporary belief in this process, because it does start to free people's minds. And then the last bit about being bold, holding your nerve and having determination to succeed are sort of character traits really of people who are involved in hackathons, both in organising them and in participating within them. There's definitely something on that. There are times when you might look around and think, is this going anywhere? Is this actually going to work? And I think it's that holding your nerve thing and just letting the process and the thoughts just lead you through. That's the kind of hallmarks of a good hackathon. I'm going to move on to the sprints process now, because this is something that Zoe and I designed in when we built our hackathon, but they're quite broad, and so I thought I'd give you some indication of what these sprints look like. But before I do that, here's your sort of archetypal planning cycle for running a hackathon that might be using a piece of software. And so, you know, largely it's this kind of construct that gives you the sense of how long it takes to get a hackathon that's using software off the ground, from the concept and the idea right through to actually delivering it. So on average, is there such a thing as an average hackathon? But this sort of activity involving perhaps a couple of hundred people or more would probably end up being something you could do within a 3-month period. So that would be for really large strategic issues or whatever it might be. You can literally run a hackathon with a couple of days notice, the right people, the right environment, the right issue to crack. So this is more for you know, larger programs, but even for large programs, it still seems a swifter way of resolving a sticky problem than having a year's worth of strategic research into it. So these sprints then. So we've got some sprints here that kind of set the scene for us. So the first one is largely how you frame the issue and look at an ideal situation to resolve it. So if you know the appreciative inquiry sort of model, it's a little bit of the dream state within that. So you would describe ideal scenarios and what you'll see and feel and know when you've resolved the situation. And it's not that you suspend judgment, it's just that you need that goal, that aspiration, that beautiful thing to aspire to. So it's worth spending some time on this, because when you're starting to come up with ideas, it's then good to come back to this first sprint and say, well, is it going to deliver that ideal situation that we described in sprint 1? And the sprint principle in itself comes from agile software development, but of course this can be applied to any non-software problem, and largely now is. And sprint 2 is the one that I always find is the easiest, because this is the one where you say to people, okay, what's stopping it? What gets in the way? What are the barriers? These things seem to fall out of people's heads without much effort, because there's probably been past attempts at this. It's probably a very bold and ambitious aspiration you have anyway, and you can normally come up with a lot of reasons why this kind of activity would be difficult and what would get in the way. So sprint 2 is like, what's going to stop us? So we know what the problems we might face are going to look like. And then sprint 3 is when you can have some fun and start getting post-it notes and flip charts and threads on online platforms, and start coming up with some what we call mini hacks, some ideas, suggestions. And these are literally where people can kind of go, wouldn't it be nice if we could do this? And then somebody else may come on that thread if it's online, or may talk about it in the face-to-face environment and just go, I really like that. I'd really like to do that as well. And what else could we do with it? Maybe build on that mini hack. So this is where people can start to sort of huddle and cluster around ideas and suggestions and make a big wish list of things which they'd like to see take a sort of a hack approach to new ideas. And then sprint 4 is when you can start to congregate some of those disparate hacks. They may be happening on 4 or 5 tables in a room, bring them all together, get people who've got that again, mindset, mentality, and energy towards solving a problem to come together to create a hack from those mini hacks. So sort of boil them up into a slightly bigger, grander solution, and then start planning and putting some effort into how do we make this feasible, how can we get people involved in it, who do we need to enroll and enlist, and start thinking about the stages that can build this from an idea into an actual either project or a thread within a work program. So those are the 4 sprints. This is a sort of an outline timetable. If you were running this over a sort of long half day or a short day, you'd probably spend 40 minutes on that aspired state. You'd spend half an hour with the barriers, because as I said earlier, that's the easiest bit. You'd probably have 2 hours coming up with mini hacks, and you'd use post-its, and you'd probably have lunch in the middle of that as well. And then you have almost a couple of hours to cluster around those problems and those mini hacks. And you can use a tool to record them and then play them back to the rest of the group as a sort of presentation. It's almost like Dragon's Den at the end of it with, here's my idea, can I have some investment, perhaps from people's time, energy and opportunity. And whilst I'm sort of thinking about hacks, one of the things that in the software world tends to help a product go from an idea into an actual design stage is that you come up with a hypothesis. So this is something I've started to throw into hackathons, where we can talk about a hack and say that we believe, and then put a verb in there that you follow that thread through, and it will help you define the hack in a almost like a product build sense. So it takes an idea from something that perhaps is maybe a little bit raggedy, a little bit woolly, and a little bit sort of unformed, and it drives it into a little bit more certainty and a little bit more clarity, even down to the fact that you have at the end of it some evidence that will prove how successful it will be, because that success criteria then can actually frame the activities which you need to put together to deliver this hack. So it's definitely wanting to move things from lots of random ideas that you would have in the old school workshop environment into something that's got a very definite product output and next stage activity. And in order to do that, I've taken a bit of inspiration from a concept and a product called the business model canvas. And I've created a hack canvas, and we used this in the hack with Zoe's gang in the NHS change model. So you give your hack a title, and these can sometimes be quite elaborate and quite creative in themselves and quite funky. You then go into describe the details of the hack, as in give it some narrative and put that hypothesis together and describe it as if somebody said, well, what does that hack do? What's its purpose? And then you can describe the impact. So this is almost like the success criteria. The hack will deliver and start to define that, because it may be a new product or a new service, but it could also be that it impacts on the way people behave. It could be a new model or a new sort of online space, a community, and so on. So the impacts could be quite far-reaching. And then you just make a little plan. You just put the first few steps in this canvas that are going to take this from an idea on a piece of flip chart paper with lots of post-it notes and scribbles all over it into something that actually becomes a fully fledged product. And so, yeah, so just a summary really. What's a hackathon? Crowdsourced innovation. It's process-lite, but there's an outcome. Be more daring with your solutions and your thinking in that space. Be very inclusive and participative, and there's a huge amount of energy that comes from them. So that's a kind of summary of what's a hack. I'll leave you with this quote before I jump on a little poll and ask you a couple of questions, actually, to see if that's landed with you and whether you think this is something you can do. This is a thought leader and a researcher and a journalist called Malcolm Gladwell, and he's coined this phrase, innovation in the heart of the knowledge economy is fundamentally social. And I don't know about you, but everybody I talk to in the world of work and maybe even in health and social care is after something where innovation can actually overcome some of the really sticky problems that we're facing in all sorts of ways. So yeah, so that's from me. I'm now going to try and attempt to jump on this polling function. So wish me luck as I dive into the new realm of technology. So I'm hoping that in front of you now, you have a little question which says, if you wanted to run a hackathon, what would people's response to you be? Would they be excited, confused, intrigued, or would they be unlikely to want you to run one? And it would be interesting to see if you can just poll a couple of responses on that one. We've got a couple of unlikelies. It can feel a little bit daring. Yeah, great. People are responding nicely. So it's shifting towards both excited and intrigued at the moment. So yeah, so I guess there's an element of it's new, it's different, it sounds a bit edgy, and so the intrigue might come from that, and the excitement might come from the fact that it's like, oh, thank goodness we don't have to run any more boring workshops anymore. So thanks for that. I'm just going to close the poll. It gives about a 15-second delay. So at the moment, most people would be intrigued, which is quite good. I'd rather people respond in that sense, kind of tell me more, and shall we experiment with a small one. But I've run some hackathons for large retailers, for my entire profession in HR, and just for smaller problem-solving solutions. So I'm now going to share these results with you. Hopefully you can see what that looks like. Yeah, that sounds good. And then I think I can just put myself back out, and I think hopefully you should be back on screen. So yeah, so that's it from me on hackathons. There's a little bit there about how you can get in touch with me, and I'll leave you with that quote from Don Tapscott, because I think that kind of sums up what hackathons tend to want to do. He talks about not an information age, it's an age of networked intelligence, and from what I can see in the past experience with hackathons, you do get some pretty good networked intelligence within that ball of fun and festival of energy. So thanks for listening to me, everybody. I think we'll open to some questions and stuff before Zoe comes back in, if that's right, Mr. Moderator person.
Thanks very much, Perry. That was a really fascinating and yeah, some really interesting thoughts and comments. I just had a couple of questions I was going to ask before we perhaps get other people to sort of start asking questions. Do you think there are particular sort of types of problems or things that are best solved through hackathons?
Yeah, I think if you've got something that's almost like very processy, and so it's you know, there's just a kind of a bit of a glitch in a process, then a hackathon might seem like a little bit of a heavy approach to just solving that. But if that process is part of a bigger chain, which is also part of people's attitudes and behaviours, then you might want to lift the hack up to that level. And start looking at not just the process, but the sort of the bigger implications to it. So I think you sort of have to think a bit big. So I think the smaller problems can just be used through other techniques. And I think really it's when do you need that diversity of thought, that sort of special time, that multiplicity of viewpoints. If you feel like you need a really fresh look at something, that's I think when a hack comes in. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And I guess, you know, some people feel quite hesitant about attending hacks.
Yeah.
And they're not, you know, particularly if they're not sure quite what it is.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of ideas about how you get those type of people engaged and how you sort of reassure them?
Yeah, I think there are some people, and the poll probably revealed quite a bit, didn't it? There was a bit of excitement and a bit of intrigue, but there are some people who probably are a little bit worried that it will put them so far out their comfort zone they won't participate in the way that they'd like to. So I'd encourage everybody to be very, very open about the way you communicate hacks and setting them up, so that people don't feel like it's a process they don't understand or know or haven't got any experience on, therefore they opt out. I think the more information you can front load with people and get discussions going, and maybe even, you know, showcase it, try a few little sample hacks with people involved that are quite you know, safe. They're not as big as the issue that perhaps you're asking them to get involved in. It can warm people up. So I think you do need to communicate. People need to understand what it's about, because their shift in mind helps the hack be more successful than the old style workshops where we don't really get anywhere. So I think I just encourage people to be very open and you know, get participation through awareness and again, that intrigue.
Okay, brilliant. And I mean, I really like the thing you were talking about, sort of the energy of the environment you create. I mean, have you got any top tips? You know, we don't always have a brilliant sort of venue, but what can you do to sort of bring that energy into a room?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I don't know if you know anybody who's involved in the IT industry, but some places that the IT guys have got as their offices can be quite conducive to this. And so if somebody knows somebody, they could probably say, look, can we use your little conference room to run a mini hack, because your environment's quite creative and so on. So I think you can beg, borrow and steal some favours to try and find some places that are alternatives, that are different, that don't cost money necessarily, and that just take you out out of your normal operating mode and environment and surroundings and give you different stimulus. And so, yeah, but I've seen people even sort of claim little village halls and turn them into a place where hacks can be done, because they kind of decorate the room a little bit more edgy, and they bring in some alternative ways to record your thoughts. So even if you've got those pens that can write on the glass, it just gets people a little bit more excited about the fact they're writing all over the walls. And I think it's those sort of things that create that sense of dare in people. So I think you do need to find an environment that's cheap but that's conducive and feels a bit edgy. And I think that's when you perhaps use your network and your friends and colleagues and get some suggestions going about how to do them. I wouldn't advocate running them in fairly sterile hotel basement rooms. That just doesn't seem the right place. Do you know what I mean? So the more edgy it is, I think the better. I've even heard of people setting them up in marquees and tents, but I'm not sure that's what people might want to do in this kind of climate.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I mean, I think so true, and actually not ending up in the sort of basement of the hotel.
Yeah.
Which happens, I think, way too often. Now, hopefully, we've got Jodie be monitoring the chat room.
Yeah.
I've seen some comments, particularly from Stephen and Nicola. So, Jodie, I don't know if you've got...
Yeah, just looking at that now. So.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. We've had some really good questions coming through. Fairly quiet in chat, but I think that's because everybody's intrigued, Perry. and they're also tuned into you. It's wonderful to, you know, it's a really good topic.
Sure.
So, yeah, first of all, we've got Nicola. I'm not quite sure where Nicola's from. Perhaps she wants to tell us in the chat box. But Nicola is thinking about doing a hack for after a young people takeover event.
Oh, nice.
And it sounds like she's in the very kind of early stages of thinking about it at the moment. But one of the questions that she's asked is about the need for a strong facilitator at hackathons.
Yeah.
Can you reflect on your experience? I know you're probably a bit biased there, Perry, but
yeah, I suppose because that's right, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's like a referee saying every football match should have a good referee. You know what I mean? I think it does require a facilitator that's got that right sort of edge and approach to it. Yeah, you're right. I'd say that anybody who's got the enthusiasm and can understand the process, though, can hold that space. So I don't think you need to be, you know, a workshops expert. If you know the subject, if you've got the passion for it, and you can understand that process and why you need those little gates, those little timestamps on the activity to drive you to an outcome, I think it's quite an open-sourced environment. Anybody can do it. I mean, I quite happily offer my experience to anybody who wants to connect with me after this about, you know, what do you do as a facilitator, what do you look out for, because I can kind of chat people through the sort of mental state that I'm in when I'm in that area. But yeah, it's an important role because people can drift and things can kind of get a little bit predictable unless you as a facilitator keep that edginess to it. Yeah, so the slides that have got those sprints and so on, you could literally take that as your facilitator guide and maybe play around with the timings depending on your subject and just push it on with energy. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thanks, Perry. And of course, all the slides and the recording of today will be available afterwards, Nicola, and anybody else that's interested. So, you know, get use of the resources. Another really important question here from Stephen, who's in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And he's really keen to run a hackathon. It seems that local university buy into it, but he's having real problems getting senior buy-in from the NHS. And he recognizes how important it is to have that clinical investment in the event. So, Perry, do you have any tips? I mean, what Stephen says is the resistance at the moment seems to be that they're just not responding. So what can Stephen do to get these senior and, you know, to that level of passivity to intrigue, you know, like you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one, isn't it? If you're just getting a completely closed door, no matter how much you knock, it's still not open, is it? So I suppose what I do is be as daring as you could with an area that you could take into that environment that they wouldn't necessarily need to give you permission to do something with. So it's a, you know, a sort of a safe but nonetheless quite adventurous hackathon you could run. It could be a small scale thing. And just experience what I've described and get some really nice outcomes from it that you could probably then do almost like a reverse business case. So you can say, look, we spent half a day, 6 people, we came up with 5 ideas, they're all really good, and we think they will change this for the better. And then say, if we didn't do it this way, this is what it would have cost us, this is what it would have potentially resulted in. And I don't think enough people do that almost reverse business case and sort of justify that the normal option wouldn't get you there, and it would cost more, and it'd be slightly longer and all that. So I'd do that. I'd do a small-scale experiment that has a business case type output for it to then throw that in the mix and just say, guys, look, we did this on a really small scale. We think if we can ramp this up, the impact could be like tenfold.
And just a very quick one here. Perhaps you can share some links with us, Perry. Stephen has also asked, and I think this is part of the business case, isn't it? Do you have any recent examples of good hack outcomes that perhaps can be used going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd love to do a piece of research to find people who've done hacks to kind of say, well, what did you get? Because people tend to be a bit shy. They always say they run a hackathon, but you never see exactly what they've got out the back end of it. I mean, Facebook apparently run hacks galore, and I'm not sure how many results, kind of feedback they've ever given people. Yeah, I know there's a really nice case study of a toy manufacturer that took people out of the normal environment. They put them in that sort of warehouse that I showed at the beginning of this. They came up with something like 25 new toy products, and they reckon they saved something like $2 million in R&D. They saved $2 million in R&D. So there are top-line examples like that, but I think Stephen's got me more intrigued now to try and find some more outcomes. I did one fairly recently with an HR team, and they've come up with about 4 projects that are going to help them with their talent management. So they haven't delivered them yet, but in the space of half a day, they've got real clarity on where they need to direct their efforts towards. So they didn't need to bring in a consultant. They didn't need to spend months picking over it. One day, it just produced 4 clear lines to follow. So, yeah, even if hacks, I think, clarify other things that might otherwise take a long, long time, they're a good way of expediting, and that accelerated impact has a cost benefit, and so we ought to look at that as well as products. So it's, you know, smoother process or swifter process has a cost benefit. So I'll undertake to do a little bit more research though on real cast iron examples. And I'll play that back into the hashtag or through you guys, because I want to know as well. So thanks, Stephen, for raising that.
Thank you. Well, that's all from the chat room right now, so handing back to Ollie. Thank you.
Thanks, Jodie.
Thanks very much, Jodie, and thanks very much, Perry. Some really fascinating Perry's going to stay on the call, hopefully, and I'm sure we can pick up with him once our other speakers have spoken to. So hopefully Zoe is still around and ready to sort of pick up where she was with her presentation. Zoe, I think I'm going to have to get the presenter. Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome back. So we were talking about the NHS and how we had been hacking the NHS change model. A few people have joined since we started, so just a quick overview. We were looking at hacking the NHS change model. I've put a link in the chat room where there's more information if people want to find more information about the change model. And for people watching online after, if you just Google NHS IQ and the change model, then you'll be able to see find more information about the change model. So we were hacking it to improve it as part of the continuous improvement cycle. We wanted to strengthen it and make sure that it was fit for purpose for organisations, not just in the NHS, but across health and care. So as I was saying before, we hacked because we wanted to do something different. We wanted to make quick, fast, effective changes across the NHS. We wanted to use a new approach and something that we wanted to test, something that we knew worked very successfully in other areas, and how could we bring it across to the NHS. So what I wanted to give you all was a bit of a practical application about what we did, how we did it, so that other people could replicate what we've done. So We had some online hack packs. This was everything that anybody needed to know before they came along to the event. So it included what's a hack, why are we hacking it, a little bit of information about the NHS change model. And it always we also talked about what people should wear, because people didn't quite know what they were coming along to. We had quite a really nice edgy venue, so people, you know, could come along casually, and what people were going to eat, and just everything, just to allay people's fears and anxiety about what was going to happen. We invited a diverse range of people to the event. So there were the usual suspects there, and that's bringing some sort of continuity there, but we wanted to have a diverse range of people, their backgrounds, their thoughts, their views, and just the way that people came about life, and was all really different. So we had some people from the NHS, of course. So we had nurses, we had doctors, we had consultants, we had managers, a broad breadth of different people across the NHS. But as I said before, we wanted to look outside the NHS and have a model which is across health and care. So we crossed the health and care boundaries. But we also looked at people from other areas. So people came from the police, the military. We invited people from the Department of Health, little social enterprises. We had a management consultant. So we had a real diverse group of people, and that was really important, as I'll come on to in a moment. There was the usual event planning that takes time and energy. And also what we wanted to do was make sure that we were going to have an event for approximately 80 people. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to gain some insights into what anybody else that was doing change across health and care, and even wider globally, what they thought about change and what they thought about the NHS change model. So we did that before the event. And what we did is we interviewed and surveyed 200 plus people using SurveyMonkey, or we did face-to-face interviews. And we asked people, what do you think about change? What works within change? What doesn't work? Where's your successes? And where do things usually fall down? So we went for quite a broad brush approach to change. And then we asked more questions like, had you heard of the NHS change model? And if you had you used it? And if so, how was it successful, or how it didn't quite work for you? So we asked lots of questions about change and the change model, and out of that, we got some really, really useful insights. So we found out that people use them for the change model for many different purposes, so for projects, events, meetings. We also found out about the knowledge that people had about the change model. And it's very obvious that the more people know, the more they found it useful. So that made us start to think about, well, actually, how could we, if more people knew about it, then more people would be finding it of use, and there we'd have more effective change across the NHS. People wanted accessible information on the practical application. Some people found the language was quite inhibiting. And then the name was also quite a contentious issue. Some people absolutely loved the NHS brand, so it's called the NHS change model, and that brought prestige. However, other people thought it was quite hindering, for example, other healthcare providers not picking it up. And then we had another discussion. Is it a model or is it a framework? So these are all the different things that we took from these 200 people, and this was all filtered into the event. So coming on to the event, we had 80 people in a room. It was one day, and what we had is we had a series of hacks or sprints to really explore what was going on, what could we change, and how could we develop a proof of concept for a new, improved NHS change model or change framework. So what were the remit of the changes? What we wanted everybody to do, and this was our scope, is bring people on board who don't like it and keep hold of the people that do like it now. Enhance the positives, because we really, really didn't want change for change's sake. We wanted to address what it was called, and we also wanted to think about the spread and implementation of the model. And this is what it looks like. So you can see it wasn't the usual sitting in rows or sitting, a lot of sitting. Everybody was up and moving. It was quite a frenzied event. It was very, very exciting. It was a very different event than I've ever attended within the NHS. So what we started with was a bit of bingo. So we've got this very diverse range of people coming to the event, but they didn't know each other. So what we did is we had a little game of bingo first. We produced some bingo sheets that had useful information that we'd need to know across the day. So we may be asking, go and find someone who was a designer. Go and find somebody who was part of the original NHS change model team. Go and find somebody that had interest in design. So there was lots of different things that we could go and find people, and this was a really, really good way of people finding out who was in the room and a good way to network. Then what we did is we used an interesting tool called Triz, and if you haven't used this before, I'd welcome everybody just to have a look online about what is Triz. So it's a Russian acronym, and it's all about, first of all, it's 3 parts. And what we did first is we looked at how we could make the worst possible change model in the world. And we wrote a whole list of things about how this would be a great disaster. So this included things like not telling anybody about it, not using it, not publicising it, not making it fit for purpose. And then after then, we marked off all of those things that we actually do at the moment. And there were quite a few things, I'm afraid to say, that we were doing that would make it not, the current model, not work. And then we looked at the third part, was all to look about what we needed to stop to ensure that we didn't have the worst possible change model in the world. So that was a really, really, really good exercise for people to start thinking differently, and that was called Triz. And then we got on to the main hacking, which was all about the sprints. It was different from other events that we've either ran or attended before, because we weren't told what to do. All we were told to do is, okay, we've had the overview, we know we know our remit, so everybody follow your interests and go and improve the model. And this was quite frenzied, so there was lots of different groups that set themselves up. Some people looked at the language, some people looked at what the design, some people looked at how it could be used in the future. So everybody went and followed their interests, and that was absolutely fantastic. So what did we come out with at the end of the day? We came out with a prototype for a new model, and we came up with Change Space, which was all about, rather than having a flat model, this is a space where people could go. It was more of a platform rather than this flat model. We came up with this slightly changed model. This isn't finished, so we are still working on the model and the wording of the model at the moment. But we were delighted that it hadn't, it was going to change, but not change too much. It wasn't change for change's sake. So what we're thinking of is developing is something that looks like this. So it would be a platform that's got the new model within it. It's got a community where the community can interact and support one another, and loads of resources and loads of case studies and tools that people can support each other and take off the shelf. And this was also going to be linked to social media like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, so people could keep the community going and support one another. So this is our plan, and it's still ongoing at the moment. We're still continuing looking at this change space and the model and how it's actually going to work, and we're still working with our community, the people from the hack, to finish this model. So that was the event. It was very It was quite wild event. It was lots and lots came out of the event. We had more outputs than we could ever have imagined. And I think this is sort of, before we went into the hack, we didn't quite know what we were going to come out of, and we put a lot of hope and trust into the people coming to the event. A learning point is you can't second guess what the group are going to come out with. And as Perry said, we did need to let go of control. So we looked at divergent thinking and convergent thinking, and what we needed to do is just let people go, and the work evolved, and the shape and the scope evolved with that. We needed to look at framing and reframing. This was really, really important when we were asking the 200 people plus about what they thought of change and the NHS change model, because we wanted to focus on change as a whole, not just the change model itself. So we had to frame our questions very carefully, and we did a lot of reframing to make sure we weren't asking questions in a way that we wanted to get the answers. We needed to balance the convergence and the divergent thinking so that we weren't too focused in areas, and we needed to keep a wide breadth of thought. As I said before, we needed to know what was in and out of scope. Because we want people to just go and innovate and find improvements, we needed to just understand what was in and out of our control. The diversity in the room was fantastic, the people's skills, the people's knowledge. We had such a wide, diverse group of people, and that was really, really beneficial to the outputs of the day. The Unconference worked really well, so this is where people follow their interests, and if it wasn't quite going to plan, they either set up a splinter group and they went somewhere else, or they continued to shape the team that they were in. And that really worked, because people were dedicating free of charge their time and their energy to support us, so it was really important to us that people actually worked on what they wanted to work on. So we told the participants at the end of the day, trust the process and go with the flow. And that actually, for us facilitators, that was really important for us as well. We needed to trust the process, and we needed to go with the flow and see where it took us and not be too inhibiting on the process. So that was our learning from the change model hack. So I've just come to the end of letting you know about what we did with the change model on our hackathon. So have we got any questions?
Let's find out if we've got some questions. I'm sure people are just sort of taking in what you've been saying, so it was really interesting. I was just going to ask you a couple of questions, if that's right, just while people are gathering their thoughts and coming up with some questions themselves. I guess, kind of, as you were the person organising this event, and it was your sort of first hack, did you get out of it what you wanted?
Yes, definitely. So we definitely got out of it a good start and some prototypes. However, I do think we needed a bit more time, and we have seen that a lot of hacks go on for maybe 2 days. So a bit more time would have been really, really beneficial on the day. But yeah, we got out of it exactly what we wanted, a changed space. And it just needs a bit more work on and going back to the participants. I think if we did have more time, then we could have done that on the day. But it was all just really, really good learning.
Okay, brilliant. And I guess that's kind of answer my second question, which is what you do differently if you did it again, and kind of, I guess, also building on that, what you've learned for sort of other events. You know, how you're going to interact differently at other events in the future.
Sorry, Ollie, how are we going to attract different people?
Yeah, sort of like what you've learned from running a hack that perhaps you can use, you know, not just in another hack, but sort of elsewhere. In other events you might use, what you've taken away that you hadn't seen before.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot that we actually learned, and my personal view is maybe, you know, this is the new way of doing things. So the learning is that we don't go back to traditional methods of rapid improvement events. Obviously, there is good stuff within that, but how can we use more of a tailored approach, a blended approach to moving forward? And this event was a great success, and we're going to hear about what's happened with hackathons in Nottingham and Hull in a moment. And there's so much good stuff coming out of these. Why would we ever go back? So I think that's sort of our learning is, this is it's a fantastic, it works. It was just a test. We were testing it the first time as a national team. We were testing a hackathon approach. So I think it's worked tremendously, and there's no going back now for me and for the rest of our team. And I think from what we know is a lot of people within the NHS health and care within England are really sort of taking this up now. So I think the next steps are to support everybody to make sure that we can, improve the NHS.
Brilliant. I'm just going to see, Jodie, you're watching the chat at the moment. I wondered if there was any sort of comments or questions that are coming through following Zoe's chats. Is Jodie there?
I'm here, Ollie. Sorry, got stuck on mute there. Yeah, we just had a couple more points coming through. So Nicola is asking, was it purely an event or did you open it up on social media? So I guess that's a question back to Zoe.
Yeah, so we had a hashtag for the event where people were inputting within from outside the event. It was mainly focused in the event, but we're going to be hearing from Hull in a moment, and they had a lot of social media activity, and maybe we leave that one up for them. But we did have a small amount, but maybe that's something that we can definitely build on in the future.
Thanks, Zoe, and thanks, Nicholas, for the question. Ollie, that's all from us in the chat room.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Zoe, and I think sort of some really interesting points that you brought up, and the change model hack. I look forward to seeing what happens going forward with the change model. So, as Zoe just mentioned, we're going to talk about a couple more hacks. So, I'm hoping somewhere on the line is Melanie. So I don't know, Paul, if you're able to.
Hello.
Hello, is that
Hi.
Melanie?
Hi.
Brilliant. You're okay. So you're involved in in a hack that was recently done in Nottingham. So,
Yes, that's right.
And we kind of put you on the spot a bit. So but what we just wanted to find out was kind of, can you give a bit of an overview of the hack and what happened at the event?
Well, I work in healthcare of older people, and it was my colleague and I. We've been in healthcare of older people for a year now, and we wanted to make healthcare of older people more appealing, really. So my colleague got a group of us together. We did this by a closed Facebook page initially. We were able to put our ideas down, any thoughts, any areas we wanted to see of improvement. And then on the day, a group of us, we all got together and we obviously went through the process, what you've been talking about today. We had 4 areas that we looked at in depth. The first one was discharge planning, and second one was hearing issues for older people. The third one was we wanted keeping our patients and our staff happy, a very, very broad area there, but it was something that we wanted to see improvements in, and improving recruitment of our staff into the older people service. So those were the areas. We went through the processes that Zoe and Perry's already discussed, and we then broke those down, and we ended up getting some outcomes. We presented our presentations to a panel of NUH staff. We were fortunate to get funding for all of our 4 groups, and we're now all working together to get those ideas in place, up and running.
And so we just got those those 4 different hacks that you had. I would just put them up on the screen so people can see about them. So just to remind you, did you get involved in sort of one of them in particular, and what was that like on that particular?
Yes, I did. So there was 3 of us. We looked at keeping patients and staff happy, which kind of worked hand in hand with recruitment and retention. So we looked at initially what things we could do to keep our staff happy, to keep our staff to stay within healthcare of older people, and then we looked at how we could change part of our ward environment. Myself and my colleague work on a new HCUT ward that's been open for a year now, and one thing that we haven't got is like a dining room or a social area for them. So we looked at how we could improve that, and we literally just got loads of ideas, just wrote them down, and then we came up with an idea of getting the old and the young together. So by getting iPads for our patients so that we could use reminiscence therapy, our patients could play games, they could look at, read a newspaper instead of us going to the shop to get a paper for them, and they could also Skype their relatives as well. So that way, our younger colleagues, our young student nurses who a lot of the time don't see older people wards as being the best placement to go on, we thought that way would kind of integrate them and help them with our older patients to kind of get them to work together. So that was our idea that we kind of came up with.
It sounds really interesting. We're also just hoping to get somebody from Hull who recently ran a hack event. Unfortunately, no one from the organisation who ran it was able to join us this morning. However, luckily I was there, and so was my colleague Jodie. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the Hull hack, and then we can kind of compare, I guess, what your experience of Nottingham was and what I discovered from being at Hull. So the event happened in Hull last week. It was run by the Yorkshire and Humber Academic Health Science Network, and they worked with Hull and East Yorkshire Hospitals NHS Trust and East Riding of Yorkshire CCG. I hope all those names are correct. It's quite a mouthful. And the idea was that it was to look at sort of patient flow through Hull Hospital. So I guess similar to you, looking at sort of an issue, but kind of a bit more a specific issue. The event took place in a sort of community centre close to Hull, to Hull Hospital, and also was quite virtual, so involved people from around the world. Had about 50 people signed up to attend, and another 50 virtually. And similar to what happened in Nottingham, sort of 3 teams. Ended up being 3 teams. One looking at sort of morning discharge. I know that's a problem across a lot of hospitals.
Yes.
You know, people they are ready to go, but actually nobody can actually sign the papers and let them leave until the afternoon, and that obviously clogs up beds for everyone else. And then the other issues they looked at was sort of from the emergency department into the AAU transfer and delays there and what caused that, but also actually people coming into the emergency department and what sort of what kind of things they could do to sort of increase those people who didn't need to be there not being there, or those people who could be treated quickly leaving as quickly as possible. I was going to ask you, Melanie, to kind of how successful do you think the event was for your Nottingham experience?
I think it was. For me personally, and I can honestly say for my colleagues, I think it was really, really successful. It was so different to any kind of study day that we'd ever done before. A lot of people were, I suppose, quite not really sure what to expect. And as the day went on, you could see the energy in the room, and you know, everybody was just really kind of buzzing and wanting to kind of get their opinion across and their idea, and really wanted to come and get a final kind of outcome, so to speak. We were able to work with lots of multi-professional staff where we wouldn't normally on a day-to-day basis. You don't ever get the opportunity to be able to sit down and have like a one-to-one or in a group and say, you know, this is the issue in my area for me as a profession. What is this the same for you? And to kind of get all those ideas out on the table and to be able to, you know, maybe agree, disagree, and then all of us to come together to then produce something or an idea or a solution. That in itself is really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, I think it's kind of a lot of that was reflected in what happened with Hull. I've been reminded that there's quite a lot of links to the stuff in Hull being posted by Jodie and Carol on the chat if you're interested in finding out about that. I don't know, Jodie, if you want to join us and sort of talk about your experience of being at the Hull event and whether you know, how successful you found it.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. It was my first, what I would call like a health and care non-technological hack that I went to. So my expectations, I mean, they were pretty much out there. I didn't really know what it was going to be like. I'm no expert in the topic that was being hacked on the day. And I think this is a really important point to make, that I don't think that really mattered. As much as you need people in there that really know their stuff, I think the diversity of people in the room was fantastic. And people coming along just with energy and a commitment to the purpose was equally important as having kind of topic experts in the room. But for me, something that I found really interesting, Ollie, was that on the first evening of the hack, we took part in an exercise called Flowopoly, which is, I'm not going to do it justice when I describe it here, but it was an interactive game where we were all ward managers for our respective wards, and we all had patients on cards, and the facilitator read out the activity that was happening at any moment in time in the hospital. So patients were coming into A&E, and we were all rushing around the room transferring cards from A&E to AAU to wards. And I think that the learning I took from that is actually, it's really important sometimes to come in to the question that's being asked at the hack in an indirect way. We're not tackling it head on. But what happened was, by playing this game, people started to get really competitive, and little comments started to be made amongst the people that were, you know, responsible for various wards. And I think had we just sat down and asked those questions directly, you know, what are the issues with patient flow around A&E, AAU, etc. I don't think we would have had such an interesting discussion had we not done it in an indirect, kind of fun, creative, engaging way. I don't know if you've got some thoughts on that, Ollie, because it was quite an interesting activity, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my experience, actually Harry mentioned it earlier, which was about clarifying things, and you know, he said, actually, hackathons are a really good opportunity to sort of clarify thought and experience. And that's kind of what I took from particularly that Flowopoly event, which, I mean, I'd never been involved in anything similar, and it seemed so simple, but actually sort of revealed so much. But actually what it did was, you know, clarified, I think, and sort of made people realise, actually, this is, you know, this is what happens in my ward, but actually that has a real impact on what happens across the rest of the organisation, and you know, actually I might have some free beds and it's going to be a quiet day, but you know, there's another ward or the AAU or wherever is really struggling, and actually it's not just about me saying, oh, you know, I'm going to, you know, enjoy that I've got 3 beds which aren't being filled today. Actually, I need to, you know, go and find and make sure the rest of the hospital is, you know, can benefit from that. Melanie, I was just going to ask, kind of, what lessons did you learn from taking part in the hack? What did you take personally from it?
I just thought it was a really, really good way to break down ideas and problems and barriers with other people. Just being able to get to speak to people and just having that opportunity, really. it was just really, really good, and I would love to be able to do all other study days like that. I think it would be great once a month if we could get together with a group of people, and however big or small that hack could be, and your problem, I mean, you could just kind of put everything out on the table and just kind of discuss it and see where you can go with it, because I just think we're always just so busy, it's really difficult sometimes to try to, a group of people might say, yes, we're going to produce this, and that might not suit other people. So this way, it's a really, really good way, a really good tool.
And I think one of the things that I benefited from in your hack was actually sort of having a team that was sort of a panel, I guess, at the end of the day with some actual, cash available to hand out.
Yes.
So it wasn't just that you were sort of there saying, this is what we want to do. It was there saying, look, this is why we want to spend the money that you potentially give us. Do you think that had a real sort of change the focus of, how people thought about things?
Yes, definitely, because we knew that there was going to be a panel in the afternoon, so we knew that we had to kind of get something concrete, and then to be able to present it to them and present it to the rest of our colleagues, and then, that we all came away with some money, that was really, really good. It really, really helped.
And so how would you sell a hack to somebody who's perhaps listening, who says, yeah, I'm intrigued, but, I'm not sure whether it's right for my organisation or would work for me. What would you say to them?
I think I would possibly start by getting some interest. Get some colleagues who is going to be on board. I mean, what worked for us was getting a closed group Facebook page, and then just start putting some comments on there and just opening it out to people. And it may take a few weeks, and there might just be a few odd people that might raise a comment, but just really kind of get information, your thoughts out, and just see what happens really. And eventually people will start coming into the group and getting ideas across, and really getting people thinking and just talking about it, and just having constant positivity and saying, this is something this is going to be good. We're going to going to get together. We're going to produce some ideas. We may not necessarily get a final idea, but it's about getting your thought processes thinking. So that's something that I would do. Definitely make sure you get a mixture of your colleagues together, so you've got different views. Yeah, I would definitely do that as a starting point. And then you can see who's on board with you, and then you can kind of work with them, and then hopefully that will then filter out for other people to take part, to be more interested.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I guess you really benefited from was having sort of senior management buy-in.
Yeah.
Sort of people wanted to support you, and I guess we need to put you in touch with Stephen in Northern Ireland, who obviously is having that problem, and get the people of Nottingham to convince Northern Ireland that hackathons are a good way forward.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Melanie. I've been Carol, who was also at the whole hack, has been busy typing away in the chat box about sort of different points. And sorry, my chat's just jumped to something else, saying about lots of different debate in a more informal way, and sort of disruptive ideas we welcome and enable the process to proceed well. Jodie, I'm sorry, I'm doing your job. I'm reading out from the chat. I don't know if there's other chat comments that you picked up that you want to jump in.
No, feel free to do my job, Ollie. More than happy. That's great. Yeah, just a bit of a discussion going on about how you make sure you can get everybody together, because obviously, you know, in our sector, people are very busy and their priority, and rightly so, isn't attending hacks, is it? So how can you do it in a way that you get the right people in the room, you know, but without bringing down service at the same time? And, you know, there's been points made by Perry and other people about the importance of having kind of the virtual element to it, but doing it in a really inexpensive and kind of crude way, I think, is the advice that's coming back. You know, just have a room, have tea and biscuits, and have your own little kind of breakout hacks that are going on. It doesn't have to be a massive kind of industrialized event. It can be something very local, very personal. But I think the key message that I'm seeing coming through is just do it. Just get started and try it out. And, you know, remember the PVSA cycle, then review what you've done, make the tweaks and try it again. But getting started is the key thing.
That's great. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So what I thought, if anybody's got any other questions they want to add to the chat, but I just wondered whether we could get perhaps a few final thoughts from various people. So I don't know if Perry, you're still connected, and whether you've picked up anything from kind of what you've heard from the other participants today.
Yeah, I think I would guess that the sort of mood is that there's a lot more positive thoughts towards being able to run a hack in your way, with your issue, with your people, as long as there's that whole support, endorsement and buy-in from those people who currently have the sort of more senior decision-making roles. And so, yeah, so I'm guessing the appetite's been raised by that, which is great news, because I think they are the sort of thing that you can warm yourself up to and experiment more with. And so I've loved the chat that's online, where people have been saying they're quite keen to take it up and they want to, you know, just get going. So I think that's the thing to do. And I think it's such an inexact science that you learn through doing with hackathons, and you sort of build up your own expertise. But yeah, never underestimate, like Melanie's been talking about, just how much impact you can have with one or two really, really good ideas that would never have come up in any other way. I've also suggested, you know, people contact me, and I'm quite happy they do that, because you know, I love working with you guys and what you're doing. So yeah, I'm completely happy that people can just ping me lines and say, help me with this, or share something with me, or whatever it is. I'm quite happy to get involved in that. So count me in.
Brilliant. And we'll just put your details up on screen.
Cool. Thank you. That's great. Really helpful. Cheers, man.
Wants to get involved. Zoe, I don't know if you've got any final thoughts. Or,
I've just really enjoyed listening to the stories from Hull and from Nottingham, and it's seen how real lives, real patients, real people, and their lives will be improved by what is happening through hackathons. So I just always love hearing stories about that. And it seems like from what's been going on Twitter, on the chat room, that there's an appetite for this. So I hope that we've supported you and you've got some ideas about what we've done and how we've done it. And please let us know what you're doing and what you're achieving and what your successes are, because that's really, really important. So, and we love hearing all those stories.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Zoe. And Jodie, I don't know if there's any final comments or questions in on the chat box, or whether you've got any sort of thoughts.
I think the final summary I've got, Ollie, and I can see this happening in the chat room right now, is just people's propensity to share and to help each other, and that really is the ethos of the hack, isn't it? People coming together to do something for the greater good. And I've just put some tip handles into the chat box. I really would encourage people to make connections around this. I think I said earlier on in the chat box that it would be a terrible shame if everybody tried to reinvent the wheel doing hacks. You know, let's share what we're learning. We're all learning as we go. This is an evolving method. So, you know, let's all connect up and share. But thank you to everybody that's contributed in the chat box. It's been a really energetic conversation this morning. So fantastic work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I see people are starting to put their Twitter handles if you want to connect with people there. So hopefully we can find different people people on Twitter. And talking of Twitter, just to remind you, on Wednesday at 4 p.m. GMT, we'll be holding a tweet chat. If you've got any sort of reflections based on what you've heard today and you want to take part, some of the participants will be joining us and taking part then. If you've never used Twitter before, this is your opportunity to get involved. And there's a friendly community there, so I'm sure it will help you join that Twitter chat. Don't forget, you can join our Facebook group. There was 2 Facebook groups actually: School for Health and Care Radicals and also the Edge NHS. And don't forget to check out the new Edge. I want to call it the NHS Edge website. It's the Edge NHS website, which is the Edge nhsiq.nhs.uk. It went live. The new site went live earlier this week. It's really nice. You can keep using our Edge Talks hashtag if you want any comments once we've finished. It just about is the end of time because we're just coming up to 11 o'clock. So I just need to remind you that next month we have only a month away, or just over a month away, the Transformathon, which is Edge Talk times 24, a 24-hour event starting at 4 p.m. on the 27th of January. Check out the Edge website if you want details of all the contributions and people taking part in that. Some of them you've heard today, and a lot more other people besides. So that's on the 27th of January at 4 p.m. And it just remains for me to thank our participants, Perry, Zoe, Melanie, Jodie, Carol, and Kate, and behind the scenes, Paul and Dean. Thank you very much. Have a lovely Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, Ollie. Great job.